let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're doing something a little different. We are completely stripping away the math, the interest rates, the complex spreadsheets, and we're looking directly into the human mind. We'll be drawing on some real heavy hitters here. Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money, Thomas J. Stanley's The Millionaire Next Door, and Vicki Robbins' Your Money or Your Life. And looking at all these together, it's absolutely wild. It's going to fundamentally change how you think about every single dollar that passes through your hands.
Let's start by breaking down a massive, massive illusion that modern capitalism has basically hardwired into our brains. When we think of wealth, we're conditioned to see the flashy stuff, right? The mansions, the sports cars, designer clothes, those perfectly curated Instagram feeds. But the reality, the invisible reality of actual wealth is entirely different. We're talking unseen investment portfolios, having free time, and just peace of mind. We judge wealth by what we can literally see, mostly because, we don't have access to people's bank accounts. But as we're going to see today, buying things just to show people how much money you have, that is actually the absolute fastest way to have less of it.
So, that brings us to the core mystery we're trying to solve today. If earning a massive salary doesn't inherently make you wealthy, and let's be real, we see high earners go totally bankrupt all the time, what actually does? If it's not about the sheer size of your paycheck, what's the actual secret mechanism behind real financial independence?
Section 1. Money is a soft skill. Behavior over math.
To solve that mystery, we really have to reframe our entire approach to finance. And this brings up a fascinating paradox from Morgan Housel's book, The Psychology of Money. Think about it. In what other fields can a person with literally no college degree, no formal training, and no background experience vastly outperform a highly educated professional? I mean, it sounds breezy, but it happens in investing all the time. Imagine a humble janitor who just quietly saves and compounds his money for decades, right? He ends up dying with an $8 million fortune. Now contrast that with a highly educated finance executive who takes massive risks, over-leverages his entire life, and ends up bankrupt. The core premise here is a real game changer. Doing well with money actually has very little to do with how smart you are and has a whole lot to do with how you behave. See, we get tripped up because we insist on treating money like it's a hard science. We think it's like physics, governed by strict, predictable laws of math and interest rates. But the reality? Money is entirely a soft skill. It's driven by psychology, human emotion, and, honestly, the history of greed and fear. If you want to understand why people bury themselves in a mountain of debt, you don't need to study fluctuating interest rates. No, you need to study human insecurity. You need to look at the desire for status and that desperate, exhausting urge to keep up with the Joneses. Section 2. Income does not equal wealth. The UAW versus the PAW, and real-world results. To see how this behavior actually plays out in the real world, we need to completely shatter the illusion that a high paycheck guarantees a high net worth. Thomas Stanley spent 2 decades studying millionaires, and he discovered 2 very distinct types of people. First, you've got the UAW, the under-accumulator of wealth. Picture a doctor pulling in, say, $350,000 a year. But because of extreme social pressure to look successful, they spend every single dime on a lavish lifestyle. So on paper, they're making a fortune, but in reality, they are completely broke. Then on the flip side, we have the PAW, the prodigious accumulator of wealth. This is your local plumber making $90,000 a year, but through the totally unglamorous habit of just saving 20% and investing it, they become a millionaire. Stanley actually came up with a neat little formula for this. You take your age, multiply it by your gross income, and divide by 10. That number right there, that's your expected net worth. If you're well above it, congratulations, you're a PAW. The big takeaway here is that the difference isn't the salary at all. The difference is the habits. So who actually are the wealthy among us? Well, the data reveals something pretty shocking. The professions with the most millionaires, they aren't the hotshot bankers or corporate lawyers. They are small business owners in super unglamorous industries. We're talking farming, and yes, even pest control. The true millionaire next door is probably driving a used Ford F-150. They're living in the exact same average house they bought 20 years ago. They buy off-the-rack suits, they rock a Seiko watch instead of a Rolex, and they're drinking a regular beer, not some fancy Chateau Margaux. Their wealth is entirely invisible to us because their money is quietly working behind the scenes in investment accounts, not shining on their wrists. Section 3. The cost of ego. Big hat, no cattle.
Okay, so if it's that simple, why is it so incredibly hard for most of us to live like that millionaire plumber? Well, it all boils down to ego. It's a trap researchers like to call big hat, no cattle.
Basically, people who go out of their way to look rich but actually aren't. There was this hilarious but kind of tragic anecdote in Morgan Housel's book about the pop star Rihanna. She actually nearly went bankrupt and decided to sue her financial advisor. Her advisor famously shot back, was it really necessary to tell her that if you spend money on things, you will end up with the things and not the money? I mean, it makes you chuckle, but it's a profoundly true statement. When people say, I want to be a millionaire, what they almost always mean is, I want to spend $1 million. And honestly, that is literally the exact opposite of being a millionaire. True wealth is defined by the cars you decided not to purchase and the first-class upgrades you completely declined.
Morgan Housel really hits the nail on the head here. He says, savings is the gap between your ego and your income. Let that sink in for a second. Once your basic human needs are met, any spending beyond a relatively low baseline of materialism is, for the most part, just a reflection of your ego. It's this exhausting daily struggle against our primal instinct to fan out our peacock feathers and prove our status to the tribe. If you genuinely want to increase your savings, you don't necessarily need to hustle for a higher income. You just need to raise your humility. And hey, if you're sitting there thinking that inflating your lifestyle is magically going to make you a happier person, Vicki Robbins' research in Your Money or Your Life totally proves otherwise. She asked over 1,000 people to rate their daily happiness on a scale from 1 to 5. And get this, whether someone was making $1,000 a month or over $4,000 a month, the average happiness score stayed completely flat. It just hovered right around a pretty mediocre 2.6 to 2.8. Blindly chasing a higher standard of living and buying more stuff, it absolutely doesn't cure what psychologists call modern madness. It just locks you even tighter inside that hamster wheel.
Which brings us to Section 4, Money as Life Energy. Trading your time.
So, if we aren't saving our money just to buy fancy things, what on earth are we actually saving it for? Well, this requires a pretty profound philosophical shift. Think about money as life energy. It is a finite, totally irretrievable allotment of time that you have on this earth, which you actively choose to trade for money. When you commute to your 9-to-5 job, you are literally trading hours of your precious life force for a paycheck. When you start viewing it through that lens, a $500 designer jacket doesn't just cost $500. No, it costs an entire week of your actual life. Once it clicks that you are literally trading your life energy, you can finally start to heal this split between your money and your life. And there are 3 clear steps to do this. Step 1 is financial intelligence. This just means actively tracking how much of that life energy you are actually spending. Step 2 is financial integrity. This is all about aligning your spending with what actually brings you deep joy, completely ignoring what television advertising tells you to buy. And step 3 is financial independence. That's when you achieve an income sufficient to cover your basic needs from a source other than paid employment. It's the ultimate freedom from financial anxiety.
Section 5, the highest dividend, controlling your time.
And that leads us perfectly into the ultimate overarching goal of accumulating wealth in the first place. Freedom. The absolute truest form of wealth is simply the ability to wake up every single morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. There was a psychologist named Angus Campbell who spent years researching what actually makes human beings happy. He looked at income, geography, education, the whole shebang. And he found that the single most powerful common denominator of happiness was simply having a strong sense of controlling one's own life. It mattered way more than your salary, way more than the size of your house. The ability to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want, that is the highest dividend that money pays. Now, to actually achieve that freedom, you have to survive the financial game. So here are some highly actionable mindsets you can implement right away. First up, stop the goalpost from moving. You absolutely have to define what enough is for you. If you don't, capitalism's absolute genius at generating envy is going to force you into taking ruinous risks. Second, practice humility over horsepower. Remember, true respect from others comes from your kindness and empathy, not from the shiny chrome on your car. Third, maintain a survival mentality. Getting money definitely requires taking some risks, but keeping money, that requires fear, frugality, and patience. And finally, increase your time horizon. Time is the most incredibly powerful force in investing. It's the literal magic that allows your money to compound and grow.
I want to leave you with a lingering question today, something to really audit your own habits with. Are you spending your finite, precious life energy just to buy things, to impress people you don't even know? Or are you quietly saving your money to buy back your life? The psychology of money shows us time and time again that true wealth is invisible, and true happiness is simply having control over your own time. Take a hard look at your own spending this week, apply these lessons, and see just how much of your life you can start buying back. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.